Anna Sorokin, no one's sure. She's either a rich German heiress or she's flat broke. The charges are insane.
Anna committed real white-collar felonies while posing as a socialite in an attempt to steal millions of dollars.
Hi, Anna. I just had some questions.
I have a question. What's you wearing? You look poor.
She is everything that is wrong with America right now.
I hear I'm famous. People are painting a public picture of me as some criminal. That's not my story.
And what is your story?
I'm a cold piece.
Anna came to New York, no rich parents, no connections. Sometimes you gotta fake it till you make it.
Now we get to the good part.
Can I take your order? I'ma serve them what they want. Yeah.
Anna is legend around here.
You have to work hard to get what you want. I've always known that. I'm building something as a private club, a step beyond the VIP room.
It's $40 million to finance.
We have 2 banks interested in loaning her the money.
Holy shit.
To building something special.
Do it on it, do it on it.
$40 million loan? How in the hell does that happen?
Do it on it, do it on it, do it.
Maybe it's what's help if you stop thinking about me like everyone else. Like basic, you know?
Well, hey there, driven women. It's Diane Wingert, your host. Now, if you are a regular listener, you were probably expecting our usual opening music, but this is no usual episode. This is our 100th episode. So I thought we should do something kind of extra in honor of this extra special moment in the life of the Driven Woman podcast. And I can't honestly think of anyone at this moment who's more extra than Anna Delvey. Am I right? The subject of the Shonda Rhimes series that has been blowing up on Netflix ever since it first was released on February the 11th. So there are many reasons why Inventing Anna has been at the top of the charts from day one. And it's mainly because it's a fascinating story. It's the kind of story that has millions of viewers utterly captivated by the sheer audacity of this young woman. But I hope it also has us asking ourselves and maybe each other some difficult questions that are not so easy to answer unless we're being really, really honest with ourselves. Now, as a former therapist, I could talk about Anna Delvey from the perspective of her mindset, her behavior. I could speculate about mental illness or personality pathology. I mean, is she a narcissist or a sociopath, or is she just a clever con artist? Could there be a history of domestic violence or child abuse, some trauma deep in her past that would explain her apparent lack of empathy or remorse for her actions? But, you know, how much of Inventing Anna is even remotely true? We are reminded on every single episode that some parts of this story are true and some just aren't. And we are left as observers to guess what's what. But you know, I want to talk about a different Anna. Well, it's the same Anna, but from a different perspective. I want to talk about Anna Delvey as an emerging founder, a female entrepreneur, because I believe, in spite of the fact that she was convicted of grand larceny, attempted grand larceny, and theft of services, and sentenced to 12 years in prison, that we can actually learn a few very important lessons about entrepreneurship from her. Now, let me be abundantly clear. I am not in any way endorsing or applauding criminal acts in order to launch an empire, nor do I believe that most entrepreneurs have committed unlawful acts in order to gain an unfair advantage. I just don't believe that any of us are all good or all bad, and that even a convicted criminal like Anna Delvey can teach us something valuable if we are open-minded enough to let them. Okay? So I want you to play along with me on this. Imagine this. You are a very, very smart young woman with a keen eye and an uncanny knack for understanding human nature. You adore fashion, art, and influence. But there are a few obstacles that need to be dealt with. I mean, first of all, you were born in Russia, and then you emigrated to Eschweiler, Germany at the age of 16. You didn't exactly fit in, and your mother was a housewife, your dad was a truck driver, and your brother was kind of the favorite in the family. So Dad eventually started his own little heating and cooling company, but he wasn't exactly the entrepreneurial mentor that someone like you needs. So your working class roots were really seen as a hindrance to the big, grand vision you had for your life. And as long as you can remember, you have longed for this glamorous life, a life that involved fashion, art, and culture. People that have no appreciation for such things are simply of no interest to you. And even as a young teen, you would spend hours alone in your room, cutting images out of fashion magazines and envisioning yourself wearing couture, eating caviar, and enjoying a lifestyle of money, power, and influence. You knew that you had to get away from people who do not know how boring they are and surround yourself with those who are anything but. So, as soon as you finish gymnasium, which is the German equivalent of high school, you convince your parents to fund an arts and design school education in London at Central St. Martin's. But once there, you realize school is just oh so boring. So after spending some time in Berlin, you eventually land an internship in Paris, very glamorous city indeed, at Purple, the chic French fashion magazine. This doesn't last very long either, but your next stop is at Purple's New York City office and Fashion Week. This is when things start to really turn for you. Because by this time, you have seemingly ditched your unimpressive pedigree and traded your Russian-sounding surname for something vaguely European, but easy for the Americans to spell and pronounce. So Anna Sorokin has become Anna Delvey. And like a butterfly emerging from its oh so boring and simply too confining cocoon, you are about to fly. Now, it's true that Anna committed crimes that landed her in jail, but even there, she knew things that most people don't learn until they have been an entrepreneur for quite some time. So I want to invite you to join me on this little excursion where we will tear a few sheets out of Anna's rule book for female founders and see what lessons she may have in store for us. And believe me, you will not need to do time to embrace any of them. Are you ready? Okay. Lesson number 1. You are a personal brand, so you must manage your image. Now, Anna embraced social media and especially Instagram as a tool for crafting her personal narrative, somehow continuing to build her following even while imprisoned. Now, she understood that who you know or appear to know is a really good shortcut to actually knowing them, and being seen with the right people in the right situations at the right time means that you will benefit from social shortcutting and from the fact that people make a whole lot of assumptions based on your surroundings. Now, Anna even finagled an invitation to the Berkshire Hathaway annual shareholders meeting and showed up like a boss. She was wearing the right clothing, standing near the right people, and saying the right things, even though she really had no legitimate reason to be there. But by positioning herself in the way that she did and managing her image so carefully, she made invaluable connections simply because of where she was and who she was seen with. You literally cannot pay for this kind of exposure in spite of what some pricey publicist might want you to believe. Now, especially in party situations where the mood is light and the energy is high, no one is really looking too deeply into whether you actually know any of the other guests. And in the meantime, your photographer and videographer are capturing all of the reputation building evidence that you can leverage for months to come. Now, I am being a little sarcastic here because this approach is now being referred to by many of my colleagues as bro marketing. The trick is we just don't seem to see it done very often by females, and you've got to admit Anna did it very, very well. Okay, you ready for rule number 2? Network with the right people. Now, this goes a step beyond being seen in the right places with the right people at the right time. This is actually getting to know people and leveraging who they know, tapping into other people's networks. I mean, here's the deal. If you are going for a VIP clientele, you've got to know the right people, not just look the part. And fortunately for Anna Delvey, by the time she got to New York City, she had been obsessively studying fashion and the arts for years. So she knew who was in and who was about to be. In one of the most talked about scenes in Inventing Anna, Anna accuses the reporter who has come to Rikers Island to interview her in prison as looking poor and questioned why she was not being interviewed in the media room instead of in the regular visitors area. So even in jail, Anna managed to style her prison jumpsuit and wore her superiority like an accessory. She insisted on having a fashion stylist for her court appearances, had to be the right stylist, and continued to cultivate her social media following with the latest demure dresses throughout her trial. So in Inventing Anna, Anna Delvey knew the importance of looking like she fit in, not only in terms of where she showed up and who she was with and what she was wearing, but she also understood how to cultivate the right attitude. Let's face it, people expect the uber wealthy to be assholes. We expect them to be arrogant, intolerant, grandiose, and condescending when they're not being infantile, neurotic, needy, or whiny. Kind of like actresses. You know, we tolerate bad behavior from the very rich or the very famous because it really does remind us that they are simply not one of us and really can't be held to the same set of expectations. And by the way, in my experience, many Americans are vaguely impressed by Europeans, especially Western Europeans. So Anna was smart to trade her Russian roots for German. Most people think of Germans as highly intelligent, hardworking, skillful people, and they wouldn't be wrong. And it, in fact, wasn't even a lie, because Anna had and still has a German passport because her parents moved there when she was 16. Ready for the next lesson? Project unshakable confidence. You know, I enjoy watching Shark Tank for the sole purpose of testing myself to see if I can predict which of the aspiring entrepreneurs will impress the seasoned investors who form up the sharks. I mean, I genuinely feel sorry for the ones who have a genuinely mediocre product, but they're so convinced it's due to become the next household word. I do feel bad for them, but I have never, ever, ever seen a shark invest in someone who wasn't absolutely convinced that their business was a winner. So unshakable confidence is magnetizing. It really, really is. And even when those around Anna started to question her, they started to question her roots, her money, her intentions, she never, ever wavered on her conviction about the Anna Delvey Foundation. Never. And the vision for it that she shared was so impeccable, her attention to detail so exacting. She knew exactly how it was going to look. She knew exactly who she needed to attract. She knew who would bring in other high-profile players, and she lured them into her dream like a masterful witch casting her spell. And let's face it, cool kids always want to be part of whatever the next cool thing is. And ADF promised to be the coolest of the cool. I mean, her vision was so extreme and so extraordinary that only the very wealthiest, most powerful, and truly elite individuals would even be eligible to apply. The power she emanated while sharing her vision was simply nothing short of intoxicating. So I can easily see why so many people got caught up in it. But if you know anything about business and money and New York City, creating the image, dressing the part, feigning the arrogance, and even encouraging people to believe you are a trust fund heiress with a $60 million fortune behind your name, it's not enough. All the Instagram followers that she had, not enough. She actually needed to impress the money people, the bankers, because in spite of all of her airs and all of her dreams, without the money, ain't nothing gonna happen. I want to share this word with you, and then we'll be back with some more lessons in entrepreneurship from Inventing Anna.
I think my father only ever wanted sons. My brother is the genius. I think my dad always expected me to fail. All men underestimate women, even the one who's supposed to love us.
Did Alan underestimate you? Is that why you humiliated him?
He's so worried about Alan. Do you seriously think he's in any danger of losing anything? I'm the one locked up for crimes I didn't commit. I'm the one denied bail. Every day, men do far worse things than anything I've allegedly done. And what happens to them? Nothing. No consequences, no fallout, and definitely no jail time. Alan will be fine, and they'll probably promote him. Men fell upwards all the time.
So Anna Delvey was no dummy, okay? She was very smart, she was very shrewd, and she was not at all naive about money. She understood this lesson. It takes money to make money, especially when you want to pull off something on the scale of the Anna Delvey Foundation. So even though she convinced quite a few people she was from money when nothing could be further from the truth, she knew damn well that ADF was never, ever going to happen unless she got a lot of money in the form of a very large loan. The problem is that female founders are rarely funded, even the ones who don't have a criminal bone in their body. Part of the reason, I believe, is that women are simply not accustomed to asking. Not just for money, asking, period. It's a well-known fact that women don't negotiate salaries. It's just not part of our cultural conditioning. If anything, women are trained to be modest, to accept what is offered, and to be afraid, to be deeply afraid of being thought of as greedy, demanding, or selfish. And I believe this is one of the reasons why women in particular are so fascinated with Inventing Anna, as well as we are fascinated with other women who are willing to ask for what they want, and those who pursue their goals as ruthlessly as any man, because this is not the norm for females. We're kind of fascinated, horrified, and awe-inspired by it. Now, Anna Delvey knew the New York City lending game was anything but a level playing field, and she knew that she was going to have to be very, very shrewd. I mean, even the Harvard Business Review acknowledges there is an enormous gender gap in venture capital funding in the U.S. Do you know that female entrepreneurs only receive about 2% of all venture funding, despite the fact that women owned 30% of the businesses in this country? That means that women, by and large, have to get their money from friends and family. So if you don't have rich friends and you are not from a wealthy family, if you're female, you're probably shit out of luck. Whereas a man with only 2 coins to rub together, no connections, no family wealth, may have a shot at getting some venture money. This is the current state of things. Now, there are people in the academic world, policymakers, and even practitioners who believe that eventually this gap will narrow. But I think it's going to take a lot more women to become venture capitalists with the intention of funding other women. For now, the money game was and still is an old boys club, specifically a straight, cis, old white boys club. And it has been for a very long time. But Anna was well aware of this, and it did not deter her. As a matter of fact, she used her shrewd understanding of human nature as an advantage in playing the game. One of my favorite scenes in the whole series was to see how she played to her finance lawyer, Alan's, unfulfilled wishes to have an ambitious, successful daughter like hers, contrasting her to the daughter we see that he does have, who's really kind of lost and self-indulgent. So Anna is able to recognize this unfulfilled wish and play to that, allowing him to see himself as her hero, her protector, her champion, beyond any point of logic or reason. And this reminds me so much of all of the marketing training that I've received that emphasizes the fact that people make financial decisions with emotion, not logic. We make very important financial decisions with our hearts, and then we justify them with our heads. Think about some of the important financial decisions you've made: buying a house, buying a car, investing in a friend's business. Be honest. Did you do it based on emotion and then convince yourself it was the right idea when it worked out, or that you got played when it didn't? All right. Are you ready for the next one? Develop resiliency. Okay, listen, if you have seen the series, you know the story. Anna went to jail. She got convicted of grand larceny, attempted grand larceny, and theft of services. She was sentenced to 12 years, got out in 4 for good behavior. But she's a survivor, and she developed even more resiliency in prison than she already had before she got there. She not only learned to survive in the dog-eat-dog world of New York City, people hustling and trying to get somewhere, but she made things work for her in prison, in Rikers Island, no less, an environment that would have broken many. One of the most important things to her was that people see her as she saw herself, as a boss, as a founder, as someone who is trying to build something, in spite of all the media attention that portrayed her as a socialite, a party girl, or a small-town con artist. She repeatedly stated that she took shortcuts, but she never thought anything she did was illegal. And she wanted to be portrayed as someone who was building something big. One of the most fascinating scenes is when Anna literally goes off the hinge, attempting to fire her defense attorney and demand that she be allowed to take the stand. The reason for this is because her attorney insisted on portraying her as a young, somewhat naive girl who came to New York City with big dreams, but zero money and zero connections, and that she was never, ever actually close to getting her hands on that $40 million loan she was seeking to fund ADF. This enraged Anna, at least the fictionalized version of Anna we see in this series, because it was more important to her to be taken seriously as an entrepreneur than it was to potentially reduce her jail sentence. Now, based on the fact that she was paid $320,000, 320 big ones, for inventing Anna. This allowed her to pay off her restitution responsibilities and, frankly, get back in the public eye in a pretty big way. So I'm pretty sure that the resiliency that Anna developed as a result of everything she's been through means we have not seen the end of Anna. Anna Sorokin, aka Delvey, is currently being deported to Germany. It literally changes by the day. So by the time this is released, she may already be there, or there may be a new story. But at the time of this recording, here's what we know. She is said to be working on a book, in discussions about prison reform, considering a collaboration with Julia Fox, and or contemplating launching a podcast. She may or may not be planning to take another shot at starting ADF. I hope you enjoyed this special edition of our 100th episode of the Driven Woman podcast. It's a little bit different than anything I've done up until now, but I had so much fun watching the series, and I just kept thinking about her as a female entrepreneur. You may or may not be surprised that nearly all of my current clients were blowing up my phone on the Voxer app asking, are you watching Inventing Anna? Have you seen Inventing Anna? Because I think they were all thinking of it in the same way. I want to thank Shonda Grimes and the entire cast of Inventing Anna, who did such a beautiful job, as well as all of the real life individuals who are portrayed in her story. And I want to thank my own team for helping me produce this content. Okay, this episode is over, but if you're as obsessed with Inventing Anna as I am, and you think you would enjoy hearing me interviewed on another podcast about my thoughts on what drives her, whether she is a narcissist or a sociopath, and what the host and I expect for her future, here is a sneak peek of my interview with host Reenita Hora on the True Fiction podcast, available now on your favorite podcast player. If I was a man instead of a young woman, would this be happening in the way that it's happening? And I think that, were we harsher with her because she is a woman, then we would be with men. One of the things I talk about a lot is ambition shaming of women. Mm-hmm. Because I think that we admire, we honor, we applaud, we endorse, we support, we encourage ambition in males.
Yes.
But girls are supposed to be modest. We are supposed to accept what is offered. Women don't negotiate for salaries, but men do. So why is this? And one of the things that Anna Sorokin really railed against is what she saw as the unfairness of her gender and how she was being perceived, as well as ageism. Now, usually I'm thinking about and talking about ageism as in being an older woman at this point in my life and facing ageism in that respect. But the ageism that she was subjected to is that she was very young. And a young woman is usually not taken very seriously. A young, attractive woman is especially not taken very seriously. And I think one of the things that she was most enraged by is that in order to spare her from a very serious jail sentence, her attorney's positioning of her defense was that it never would have happened. She was never going to get that money. She was never going to build that foundation. She was never going to get those 6 floors of that building. This was a fantasy of a silly, young, naive little girl. And that was how he wanted to defend her, so that everyone would think, yeah, this is just a joke. And let's slap her wrist and she can go on her way. And she was enraged by that, because even if it meant spending the rest of her life in prison, what she wanted people to know is, I am a founder, I am an entrepreneur, I am building a business. I did almost make it. That was more important to her than anything. And that was the most striking thing to me, is when your entrepreneurial identity is so well developed that the thing that matters most is not whether you succeed or fail at that entrepreneurial venture, but how you are perceived by others.